Toronto, a global metropolis of shimmering skyscrapers and bustling streets. It's a beacon of finance, culture, and innovation. But what if I told you that the very DNA of this city, from the towers that touch the sky to the industries that power our nation, was forged by a handful of visionary Jewish families? These weren't just business owners, they were empire builders. People who, from the most humble beginnings, rose to become the quiet architects of a world-class city. They arrived here with little more than ambition, fleeing persecution and poverty in Europe. They faced a world of closed doors, an Anglo-Saxon establishment that often locked them out of the main corridors of commerce. But where others saw obstacles, they saw opportunity. They built empires from scrap metal and sewing machines. They turned small storefronts into sprawling real estate portfolios. They laid the very foundations, both literal and economic, that modern Toronto now stands on. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the 10 biggest Jewish family enterprises that transformed Toronto. These are the stories you've never been told. Number 10. Kensington Market's storefront pioneers. Before the gleaming towers and the corporate giants, Toronto's economic heartbeat was found in its neighborhoods. And no neighborhood tells the story of Jewish entrepreneurial spirit better than Kensington Market. In the early 20th century, this wasn't the bohemian tourist spot we know today. It was the absolute epicenter of Jewish life, a bustling open-air marketplace born from pure necessity and grit. Between 1900 and 1931, Toronto's Jewish population skyrocketed from about 3,000 to over 45,000 people, most fleeing the horrors of Eastern Europe. They first settled in The Ward, a crowded immigrant reception area, but soon moved west, looking for better homes and a place to put down roots. They found it in Kensington. Shut out from the established business world, they didn't wait for an invitation to build their livelihoods. They just created their own economy. Families turned the ground floors of their houses into shops, tacking on makeshift storefronts and displaying their wares on the sidewalk. What started with goods sold from handcarts quickly grew into a dense network of family-run businesses. Butchers, bakers, grocers, and tailors lined the narrow streets. By the 1920s, it was known simply as the Jewish Market, a place where the air was thick with the smells of fresh-baked challah and pickling spices, and the sound of Yiddish haggling. At the time, a huge portion of the city's Jewish population lived in and around Kensington, served by over 30 local synagogues. These small family businesses were more than just a way to make a living. They were the building blocks of a community. The profits from a kosher butcher shop or a fruit stand helped build synagogues like the Kiver and Anshe Minsk, which still stand today as monuments to that era. That money also provided the seed capital for the next generation to move from retail into manufacturing, especially in the nearby Spadina garment district. These weren't giant corporations, but their collective impact was massive. The families of Kensington Market didn't just sell goods. They built a self-reliant economic ecosystem. They transformed a quiet neighborhood into one of Toronto's most vibrant commercial hearts, creating a model of immigrant entrepreneurship that would define the city for a century to come. They laid the first stones upon which so much other success was built. Number 9. The Samuel family and Sigmund Samuel Hardware. From the grassroots economy of Kensington, we now turn to the wholesale engines that supplied the city's explosive growth. In the early 1900s, while Toronto was rapidly expanding, it was families like the Samuels who provided the literal nuts and bolts for its transformation. The story starts with Louis Samuel, who, with his brother, Mark, came over from England in 1855 and founded a hardware and scrap metal business. The company, M&L Samuel, grew steadily. But it was Louis's son, Sigmund Samuel, who would elevate the family to the top tier of the city's industrialists. Born in Toronto in 1867, the same year as Canadian Confederation, Sigmund was fiercely proud of his homeland. He took over the family business in 1887 at just 21 years old and steered it to incredible new heights. By 1911, under Sigmund's leadership, the firm was Toronto's largest wholesale hardware company. Think about what that means. As waves of immigrants poured in and new subdivisions were built, every nail, screw, tool, and piece of metal needed to build those homes had to come from somewhere. Sigmund Samuel's company was a primary source, a critical artery in the circulatory system of urban development. They were importing and manufacturing steel and metal products on a massive scale, fueling the pre-World War I construction boom. That physically shaped the Toronto we know today. The Samuel family's success showed a key transition. The Jewish community's move from small-time retail and scrap peddling to commanding the heights of wholesale and manufacturing. They weren't just participating in the economy anymore, they were provisioning it. And even though Sigmund was an elite industrialist who attended Upper Canada College, he still faced the sting of anti-Semitism, a reminder of the barriers that existed even for the wealthy. But the family's legacy goes far beyond industry. Sigmund had a core belief. You give back to the community where you made your fortune. This philosophy would become a defining trait of so many of Toronto's successful Jewish families. He became a major philanthropist and a patron of the arts. His passion for Canadian history led him to build a world-class collection of Canadiana, which he donated to the Royal Ontario Museum, even funding the construction of the Sigmund Samuel building to house it. He also made huge donations to the University of Toronto, most famously providing a quarter of the cost for a new main library in 1951, which was named the Sigmund Samuel Library in his honor. The Samuel family's story is one of building on a legacy, not just in business, but in community. They didn't just supply the materials to build a city. They invested their fortune and their name in building its cultural and educational institutions. Number 8. The Enkin family and tip-top tailors. From the hardware that built the city's frame, we now turn to the industry that clothed its people and employed a huge part of its Jewish community, the garment trade. While thousands of families ran small shops, a few titans emerged who scaled the schmate business, that's Yiddish for the rag trade, into a national enterprise. At the forefront was the Enkin family and their iconic company, Tip Top Tailors. By the 1930s, the garment industry was the lifeblood of Toronto's Jewish economy. It's estimated that 1 out of every 3 employed Jewish people in Toronto worked in the needle trades. At the heart of it all was Max Enkin, who led Tip Top Tailors. This was no backroom workshop. Tip Top was a manufacturing powerhouse. The company's stunning Art Deco headquarters on Lakeshore Boulevard, built in 1929, wasn't just a factory, it was a landmark. It represented the professionalization of an industry that had long been defined by grueling sweatshop conditions. Inside, thousands of workers, many of them Jewish immigrants, cut and stitched clothing that was sold across the country. Tip-top tailors, along with giants like Eaton's, anchored an industry that turned Toronto into a major clothing exporter. But the story of the Enkin family is also tied to the rise of Jewish social services. Max Enkin wasn't just a business leader, he was a community builder. In 1947, he became the first chair of JVS Toronto, the Jewish Vocational Service, organization founded to help community members, including Holocaust survivors arriving after the war, find jobs. The very first JVS offices were even housed inside the Tip Top Tailors building, cementing the link between the family's success and its social commitment. The sheer scale of companies like Tip Top also drove the push for unionization. Concentrating thousands of workers in single factories created the perfect conditions for organized labor to flourish. While the relationship between Jewish owners and Jewish workers could be complicated, these large factories became the battlegrounds where unions fought for and won better wages, hours, and working conditions. So the Enkin family's legacy is really twofold. They built one of Canada's most recognizable clothing brands, a monument to Jewish industrial skill. But they also played a key role in creating the communal infrastructure that supported the workforce, ensuring the prosperity generated by the Schmata business was shared. Number 7. The Frankel Brothers and Frankel Brothers scrap metals. In any growing city, what gets torn down is just as important as what gets built up. That cycle of demolition and construction creates a river of raw materials, and the family that controlled that river in early 20th century Toronto was the Frankels. Their story is a classic immigrant tale of turning base materials into gold. Leo Frankel arrived in Toronto from Germany in 1881, a 17-year-old looking for a shot. He started as a bookkeeper and was soon joined by his brother Maurice. By 1886, they struck out on their own, opening Frankel Brothers, a wholesale dealership in scrap metal. They started small, but their timing was perfect. Toronto was industrializing, and the demand for recycled materials was exploding. By 1911, Frankel Brothers was the largest scrap metal dealership in the city. Their business model was simple but brilliant. They bought up the scrap iron and steel from old buildings and factories, processed it, and sold it back to the foundries and manufacturers who were building the new Toronto. They were the original recyclers, a critical, if often overlooked, part of the industrial ecosystem. Their operations on Eastern Avenue became a hub for the city's raw materials. Like the Samuels, the Frankels represented the community's move from street-level peddling to wholesale dominance. Leo Frankel quickly rose in stature. The family bought a grand home on prestigious Jarvis Street and enrolled their children in Upper Canada College, clear signs of their social climb. They incorporated the business in 1923 with a capital of $1 million, transforming a local scrapyard into an international enterprise. The family's influence continued for generations. After Leo's death, his sons took over, renaming the business Frankel Steel before selling the 75-year-old operation in 1961. But the story came full circle when, over a decade later, the company was bought by another prominent Jewish family in the steel industry, whose own ancestors had also started out dealing in scrap. The Frankel brothers' empire highlights a crucial part of Toronto's development. They were masters of the city's material life cycle. They understood that wealth could be created not just from new products, but from the remnants of the old. By controlling the flow of scrap metal, they provided an essential resource for industrialization, literally reshaping the raw materials of the city into a platform for its future. Number 6. The Goldenberg family and their kosher restaurants. A city isn't just built with steel and concrete, it's built with community. And for the thousands of Jewish immigrants arriving in Toronto, community was forged over meals that tasted of home. The Goldenberg family were pioneers in creating these vital social hubs. In 1908, brothers J.S. and William Goldenberg opened Toronto's very first kosher restaurant on Terowley Street. At the time, Toronto's restaurant scene was all traditional British fare. The Goldenbergs offered something radically different, a place where Jewish immigrants could not only eat by their dietary laws, but also gather, speak Yiddish, and connect with their culture in a new, often alienating land. Their restaurant was more than a place to eat. It was a home away from home, a kibbutzeria where factory workers and intellectuals could schmooze and debate the day's politics. As the Jewish population moved west from the Ward, the Goldenbergs followed. They relocated their restaurant to Spadina Avenue, right in the heart of the new Jewish district. Their success mirrored the community's growth. For decades, right into the mid-1950s, Goldenberg's restaurant was a landmark on Spadina, a cornerstone of the area's vibrant Jewish life. These family-run eateries were the social engines of the immigrant experience. They were often run out of the ground floor of the owners' homes, blurring the line between family life and business. They served as informal community centers, job agencies, and even matchmaking venues. For a newcomer stepping off the train, being pointed toward a place like Goldenberg's meant finding a safe haven, a familiar meal, and a network that could help them get started. The Goldenbergs weren't just restaurateurs. They were community architects. By establishing the city's first kosher restaurant, they created a business model that dozens of other families would follow. They helped make Spadina Avenue the definitive Jewish commercial strip, a precursor to the multicultural mosaic that defines Toronto today. Their legacy isn't measured in dollars, but in the countless connections forged and the cultural identity preserved within the walls of their restaurant. Number 5. The Ladovsky Family and United Bakers Dairy Restaurant. If the Goldenbergs were the pioneers, the Ladovsky family represents something perhaps even more remarkable: endurance. For over a century, through waves of migration and urban transformation, one restaurant has remained a constant, a living landmark of Jewish life in Toronto: United Bakers Dairy Restaurant. The story kicks off in 1912, when Aaron and Sarah Ladovsky, a young couple from Poland, opened a small bakery and coffee shop on Agnes Street in the ward. Their plan was simple: bring back the flavors of the life they'd left behind. They hung a sign that read, 5-cent coffee house, and started selling bread and dairy meals, quickly becoming a popular spot. Like the Goldenbergs, the Ladovskys followed their community. As Jewish families moved west, United Bakers relocated to Spadina Avenue in 1920. The restaurant thrived, becoming a magnet for workers from the nearby garment factories. It was a true family affair. The small space, with only 6 tables, was always packed with fascinating characters, including patrons from the Jewish Labor Lyceum next door who came to discuss politics over coffee. But the family's greatest move came in 1986. As the Jewish community continued its northward migration up the Bathurst Street corridor, United Bakers made a bold decision and relocated to Lawrence Plaza. While other iconic Spadina-era spots faded into memory, the Ladovskys ensured their legacy would continue. They didn't just move a restaurant, they moved a cultural institution, planting it firmly in the new heart of the community. For generations, United Bakers has been a second home for countless families. It's a place where deals are made and traditions are passed down. The menu itself is living history, with items like their famous split pea soup remaining unchanged for over 100 years. Legendary Yiddish authors like Sholem Asch and Isaac Bashevis Singer were known to eat there. It's become an oasis of stability in a constantly changing city, a place where fourth-generation diners can eat the exact same dishes their great-grandparents enjoyed. Today, run by the fourth generation of the Ladovsky family, United Bakers stands as a powerful symbol of resilience. Its journey from the ward to Spadina to Lawrence Plaza perfectly maps the migration of Toronto's Jewish community. The Ladovsky family's century-long commitment has preserved a vital piece of the city's cultural heritage, proving that a family business can be a powerful anchor for an entire community. The stories of these families show how culture, community, and commerce can intertwine to build a city. From the bustling market stalls of Kensington to the enduring legacy of a 100-year-old restaurant, we're seeing how deep roots create incredible success. If you're finding these stories as fascinating as I do, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss where we go next as we count down to the number 1 family on our list. Number 4. The garment contractors for T. Eaton Company. We've touched on the schmate trade, but to understand its true scale, you have to look at its relationship with the single biggest retailer in the British Empire, the T. Eaton Company. While Eaton's wasn't a Jewish family business, its colossal demand for clothing fueled a massive ecosystem of Jewish-owned contracting factories, turning hundreds of families into industrial players. It was a complex, symbiotic relationship that both built fortunes and sparked one of the biggest labor disputes in Toronto's history. By the early 1900s, Jewish tailors and manufacturers dominated Toronto's clothing sector. Many of these families ran factories in the Spadina district, with their biggest and most demanding client being Eaton's. The Eaton's clothing factory was the largest single employer for the Jewish community. An estimated 80% of its garment workers were Jewish. These family-run factories were the engine rooms of Toronto's economy, churning out coats and suits to meet the retail giant's insatiable demand. This relationship, however, was full of tension. The pressure from Eaton's to produce more for less created the classic sweatshop conditions. This set the stage for a dramatic showdown in 1912. Eaton's management tried to force its male coatmakers to do finishing work, hand-sewing linings, without any extra pay. The men saw this not just as a pay cut, but as taking work directly from their female colleagues. When 65 male operators refused, Eaton's locked them out. The response from the community was electric. The newly formed International Ladies Garment Workers Union, or ILGWU, organized a strike, and over 1,000 garment workers, a third of them women, walked out in solidarity. The cause mobilized the entire Jewish community. Yiddish slogans declared, "We will not take morsels of bread from our sisters' mouths." On March 23, 1912, over 2,000 supporters marched through Toronto, a powerful show of solidarity. The strike ultimately broke after 4 grueling months, and Eaton's retaliated by refusing to hire Jewish people for a time. Still, it was a watershed moment. It was the first major strike by the ILGWU in Canada, and it galvanized Toronto's Jewish working class. It proved the immense economic power concentrated in the Jewish-run garment industry and their collective ability to challenge even the most powerful corporation in the country. The families who ran these contracting businesses were at the center of this incredible economic drama, caught between the demands of a corporate giant and the needs of their workers. Their factories were where fortunes were made, and where the fight for workers' rights in Toronto found its powerful voice. Number 3. The Jacob Singer Real Estate Empire. Long before the Reichmanns and Tannenbaums built their steel and glass monuments, one man was quietly assembling a real estate empire that made him the undisputed king of Toronto property. His name was Jacob Singer, and his story is a masterclass in turning humble beginnings into immense wealth through relentless investment in the city's land. If you were standing on Queen Street West in the early 1900s, you might have walked right past number 133 without a second glance. It was a small shop with a dusty window and a sign that read, J. Singer, watchmaker and jeweler. But behind the facade of this modest pawn business was the most powerful real estate magnate in the city. Jacob Singer, an immigrant from Austria who arrived around 1876, was, by 1911, Toronto's single largest real estate owner and taxpayer. Singer's method was the immigrant hustle personified. He started small and thought big. From the profits of his Queen Street shop, he began buying property. Not massive towers, but small parcels of land, lots and houses scattered all across the rapidly growing city. He built his fortune not through flashy developments, but through the patient, strategic acquisition of property, holding land in virtually every part of Toronto. His success was staggering. When he passed away in 1911, his will revealed an estate worth nearly $700,000, an astronomical sum for the time. The list of his properties was immense, a testament to his belief in real estate as the ultimate engine of wealth. While other wealthy Jewish businessmen were adopting modern Canadian practices, Singer stuck to his old shop and his old ways. A quiet, unassuming genius. But Singer's impact went beyond his personal fortune. He became a model for the entire community. In an era of intense population growth, property ownership was a key pathway to prosperity. The Zion Institute, a community center, even became an unofficial hub for real estate deals, with properties bartered and sold, inspired by the success of men like Singer. He showed that even in the face of systemic barriers, land was a great equalizer, a tangible asset that could be bought, held, and leveraged to build generational wealth. Jacob Singer was the original real estate titan of Toronto's Jewish community. He didn't build the tallest buildings, but he owned the ground beneath them. He understood, better than anyone, the fundamental value of the land on which the future city would be built. Number 2. The Tannenbaum family, Runnymede Iron and Steel, and York Steel. If Jacob Singer owned the land, our next family built the city's skeleton. The Tannenbaums are a dynasty forged in fire and steel, a family that literally provided the structural backbone for Toronto's mid-century transformation from a provincial capital into a modern metropolis. And their story begins, like so many others, with a horse and cart. Abraham Tannenbaum arrived in Toronto from Poland in 1911. He started out collecting scrap metal. But Abraham was incredibly industrious. He went from peddling scrap to recycling metal from demolition sites, eventually founding Runnymede Iron and Steel, a major steel fabrication firm. He brought his sons, Joseph, known as JT, and Max, into the RIM business when they were just boys. They learned the trade from the ground up, working in the yard and absorbing their father's relentless work ethic. During World War II, with steel in high demand, the business boomed. After the war, the two brothers took control, but in 1951, they parted ways after a dispute. That split didn't weaken the family's influence, it doubled it. JT stayed at Runnymede, while Max launched his own company, York Steel. For the next several decades, these two brothers and their competing firms became the dominant forces in southern Ontario's steel industry. During the explosive post-war building boom of the 50s and 60s, Toronto was a city under construction, and the Tannenbaums were at the center of it all. Look at any major project from that era, and you will find their steel. The highways connecting the new suburbs, the bridges spanning the ravines, and the skyscrapers forming the city's modern skyline, all were built with steel fabricated by either Runnymede or York Steel. The brothers were legends. Max, in particular, was known for his tough-as-nails business style. He reportedly operated without a secretary, keeping the details of his vast financial empire, which included real estate and cable television, mostly in his head. The Tannenbaum dynasty would eventually extend into construction, real estate, and, in the next generation with Larry Tannenbaum, into sports and entertainment, with ownership of Toronto's Maple Leafs and Raptors. Like other families on this list, their immense success was matched by immense philanthropy. They became crucial supporters of Toronto's Jewish community, funding schools, and care for the elderly. But their generosity spread across the city, with transformative donations to institutions like Mount Sinai Hospital. The Tannenbaum family's legacy is written in the very framework of the city. They took a humble scrap metal business and turned it into an industrial empire that powered Toronto's greatest period of growth. Number 1. The Reichman family and Olympia and York. And now we arrive at number 1. The family that didn't just build in the city, but built the city in their own image. a family that gambled on a scale no one had ever seen, transforming skylines not just in Toronto, but around the world. The Reichmanns. The story of the Reichmann brothers, Paul, Albert, and Ralph, is one of global upheaval and staggering ambition. The family, led by their patriarch Samuel, were prosperous merchants in Vienna who made a series of harrowing escapes from Nazi persecution, eventually settling in Tangier, Morocco. There, Samuel became a wizard in currency trading. In the 1950s, the family moved again, this time to Canada. They started with a tile import business in a Toronto suburb, Olympia floor and wall tile. But Paul Reichmann, the family's visionary, soon saw a bigger opportunity in property development. In 1964, they created Olympia and York. Their first major project was Flemington Park, a massive community in North York. But their ambition was aimed at the heart of Canada's financial power. In 1971, in an audacious move, Olympia and York won the bidding war for the last undeveloped parcel of land at King and Bay Street. They announced plans to build Canada's tallest building. The project, First Canadian Place, almost collapsed, but after years of lobbying, it went ahead. The 72-story office tower, finished in 1975, was a massive success and instantly redefined Toronto's skyline. It was a statement. The Reichmanns had arrived, and they were thinking on a monumental scale. Through the 70s and 80s, Olympia and York grew into the largest property developer in the world. Paul Reichmann's genius was seeing value where others saw risk. They moved into a depressed New York City market, buying up a portfolio of 9 skyscrapers for a low price and watching their value soar to billions. They went on to build the World Financial Center in New York. Then came their biggest gamble of all, Canary Wharf, a colossal project to transform London's derelict docklands into a new financial center. At their peak, the Reichmanns were among the richest families in the world, controlling a global real estate empire worth an estimated $31 billion. Yet, they remained intensely private, devoutly Orthodox Jews who lived in modest Toronto homes and halted all work on the Sabbath. Paul Reichmann's word was his bond, his handshake as good as any contract. Then came the crash. In 1992, the global property market cratered. Olympia and York, weighed down by $20 billion in debt, collapsed in a spectacular bankruptcy that sent shockwaves through the financial world. The empire crumbled. But the Reichmanns' impact on Toronto was permanent. First Canadian Place remains the anchor of the financial district, a testament to their vision and audacity. They raised the bar for what was possible, transforming Toronto from a city with a skyline to a city known for its skyline. From the crowded stalls of Kensington Market to the pinnacle of global real estate, the stories of these 10 families are more than just business case studies. They really are the story of Toronto. These are tales of resilience, of fleeing persecution and building new lives in a country that offered both opportunity and obstacles. They're tales of vision, of seeing a metropolis in a provincial town, an industrial powerhouse in a pile of scrap metal, and a global financial hub in a muddy construction site. And they're tales of community, of businesses that served as social anchors, preserving culture and supporting newcomers. The Singers, the Tannenbaums, the Reichmanns, the Ladovskis, and all the others didn't just happen to be in Toronto as it grew. They were the catalysts. Their ambition fueled the city's expansion. Their industries provided its economic backbone. Their philanthropy enriched its cultural soul. They built the skyscrapers, but they also built the synagogues. They supplied the steel for the highways, but they also established the community centers that served generations. Their legacy is written in stone and steel across this city. It lives on in the institutions they funded, the neighborhoods they shaped, and the entrepreneurial spirit they ignited. They are the quiet architects of a world-class city. Which of these family stories hit you the most? Was it the quiet empire building of Jacob Singer, or the spectacular rise and fall of the Reichmanns? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the hidden histories of wealth and power, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Tell us what city or what industry we should uncover next. Thanks for watching.